warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Is the fan like coming this way? It's like because it bothers the recording. Yeah, it does. Okay. Alright.
The Bluetooth device is ready to pair.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Right. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We begin with our dua. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi fi kulli lafdin abada ala ni'amillahi wa afdalihi. Allahumma atina min ladunka rahmatan wa 'alimna min ladunka 'ilma. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nawaitu ta'allum wa ta'alim al-mudhakkar wa tadhkir wa nafa' wal intifa' wal ifada wal istifadah. والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقرب الثواب سبحانه وتعالى مع نفس وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم ألهمنا علما نفقه به أوامرك ونواهيك وارزقنا فهما نعرف به كيف نناجيك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين وإلهام الملائكة المقربين. اللهم أغننا بالعلم وزينا بالحلم وأكرمنا بالتقوى وجملنا بالعافية يا أرحم الراحمين آمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم إنا نستودعك ما قرأناه وما نقرأ بهذا المجلس وما قبله وما بعده فاحفظه علينا حتى ترده إلينا وقت احتياجنا إليه يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أكرمنا بنور الفهم وأخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وافتح لنا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا حكمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم يا مقاليد الأمور كلها بيده وإليه يرجع الأمور كلها يا فتاح يا عليم يا فتاح يا عليم يا فتاح يا عليم افتح علينا فتحا قريبا. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وسد لساني واهدي قلبي وافعل كذلك بأحبابي أبدا وارزقنا كمال الفتوح العارفين والفقه في الدين مع كمال الإخلاص والصدق واليقين مع والعافية والغنى والنصر والحفظ والنفع والانتفاع وخيرات الدارين وعلوم الأولين والآخرين آمين. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الفاتحة. آمين. والنيات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهدي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله وصحبه حق قدر مقداره العظيم. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهدي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله وصحبه حق قدر مقداره العظيم. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهدي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله وصحبه حق قدر مقداره العظيم. نوينا بدراستنا وتدريسنا لسيرة النبوية الشريفة مناجاة الله تعالى وابتغاء محبته لقوله تعالى إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم. ونوينا اقتداء واهتداء بالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ونوينا أن نزداد في محبته وقربه ونوينا ذلك لأهلنا وأقاربنا وأحبابنا وكل المسلمين أجمعين. ونوينا أن بقراءة سيرة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن ينتشر نوره في بلدنا وفي العالم كله. ونوينا أن نجمع معه في هذه الدنيا وفي الآخرة مناما ويقظة وأن يسكن معه في Jannatil A'la Firdaus. Amin. And mention your own niyats. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alright, we are going on with our lesson. Alright, so we are still at we finished Sayyidah Halima, right, last week? Right, so right now we are okay, I'm just going to read something from the book, right, and I'll translate as I go along. Right, but we have read it already, but I'm just going to read it again lah, right, for our just for the barakah of the book. Alright, so al-thalith, right, so the from the check from min kitab Durus al-Sirah Nabawiyah Sharifah, right, lessons from the Sirah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, bil Habib Hadi bin Ahmad bin Abdullah al-Haddar, right, from Habib Hadi bin Ahmad bin Abdullah al-Haddar, nafa'na bihi wa bi'ulumi fi ad-darin ila an qala. He said, right, الثالث وأول من أرضعته صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أمه ثم ثويبة الأسلمية جارية عمه أبي لهب ثم حليمة بنت أبي ذؤيب السعدية. Right, so the first one to breastfeed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was his mother, right, and second was Thuwaiba, right, who was the slave girl of Abu Lahab. And third was Halimatu Sa'diyah. وأقام معها في بادية بني سعد حتى أتم 4 سنين. And he stayed with her, with Bani Sa'ad, like her tribe, right, for 4 years. ثم أعادته إلى أمه بعد أن شاهدت الكثير من بركاته صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم. Right, and then she returned him, right, to his mother. Right, after she saw so much of the barakah, right, and the miracles at the hands of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, one thing that I want to mention that someone mentioned to me last week after this lesson, right, was that sometimes you wonder, when you see Sayyidah Halima, she picked up Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and she brought him home, right, and she took care of him, knowing that there was no monetary income, right, for her, right. And someone mentioned to me last week, when you think about it. Right, Sayyidina Halima bringing Rasulullah home, right, who is looking after who? Is it Halima looking after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or is it Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam looking after Sayyidina Halima? Right, then you might think she's doing him a favor. Who's doing who the favor? Right, it's him, right, because wherever he goes, right, he is blessed, right, and his hands they knew him as a blessed boy. Right, they will go to him to get cured, right, and him being in her household, that's why she wanted to hold on to him. Right, otherwise, why would she, want to hold on to this baby without any pay? Right, she wanted to hold on because most of the wet nurses, right, 2 years and that's it. If you all want to move there, because I think more people are coming in, right, just like all the way, right, so that more people can join us. Right, alhamdulillah. Yeah, so when you think about it, like when he came into her household, right, they were in famine, right, there was drought, there was hunger, right, the other people were suffering. Right, except her, right, so he was basically looking after her, right, even though he wasn't. There's no one there. You can sit up, you can come up. Yeah, so basically, you see him, living with her, right, but him being there, right, is so beneficial for her that she actually wanted to keep him for 4 years, right, and actually she would have kept him longer if not for the incident of the splitting of the chest. Right, it's only because of that incident, right, that she panicked, right, and she sent him back because she didn't want anything to happen to this boy at her hands. Right, but subhanallah, like the fact that she kept him so long, right, of course she fell in love with him very much. Right, she can't let him go. Right, but it does show, right, that he was the one who was looking after her, right, and she was not looking after him, and that was the way Rasulullah was throughout his life and even after his death, right, till today. Right, so because he is our prophet. And he is a prophet to the end of times. So don't think that by his death, like by him leaving this physical world, he has stopped his da'wah. He has stopped calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or he has stopped helping us, right, finding the way and guiding us in this world. Right? On the contrary, he is the one who has the greatest da'wah in this world till the end of time. Right? Nobody else will surpass the da'wah being the calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one will surpass Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And all the people who are going around spreading Islam, all that we are doing is that we are just being just basically representing, right, or just doing on his behalf. Right? And in fact, right, us doing on his behalf, right, it will be done whether or not we are there. Right? It's to be, in fact, to benefit us, right, who is teaching and who is spreading the knowledge. It is that it's for our own benefit, right, that we speak about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So we know that he's not at all dead. Right? He's physically dead. Right? And he is by his life in his grave, as from the hadith that the prophets are alive in their graves and they are praying, right, in their grave. So we believe that, it's from a hadith, right? But he has physically left this world, right? But he's not at all, in any way spiritually left this world, nor intellectually left this world, nor emotionally left this world. He's very much alive, right, in the hearts of millions and billions of Muslims all over the world. Right? He's the one person that Muslims will actually unite over. Right? Like if we speak anything bad about our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like we stand up. Like we will not hear people insulting our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he's the most beloved to every Muslim. Like even the most sinning of Muslims, like they like there's this love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alright. So and then so he stayed with her for 4 years, and then she sent him back to his mother, right? So and then number 4, right? So والرابع وتوفي والده وهو حمل عند أخواله بني عدي بن النجار بالمدينة ثم توفيت أمه وهو ابن 6 سنين بالأبواء بين مكة والمدينة وكانت قد قدمت به على أخواله بني عدي بن النجار تزيره إياهم. Right, so here actually it's in the notes that I gave you all, right, the translated parts, it's all there. Right, it should be there. Do you all get any notes? No. It's not new. It's the last one, the last time round. We didn't finish reading the chapter. Right, it should be with you all. Right, I will send it out again. Right, but it should be there because I translate chapter by chapter. Right, so this is the second chapter, but still the second chapter. So I think it should be there translated. Right, but I'll translate it now. Right, so the 4th point, right, is that his father passed away when he was still in his mother's womb. Right, so Aminah was still pregnant when his father passed away. When through that she was 2 months pregnant. Right, and it was a very sad news, right, for her. And also, as a newlywed, they just got married, right? Just got married. She spent 1 night with him, and he left to travel, and he passed away on the way. Right? It's very difficult for a young woman, right? And she was a teenager, 18 years old, right? So you can't imagine that people now, subhanallah, right? You're pregnant, you're a young bride. She's still a bride, She's not, not past the first year yet. So still 2 months married, right? And she's pregnant, and her husband passes away. And the news comes back, and she is at this point having dreams of of prophets coming to tell her the good news about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And today we will speak about her, right, the beloved mother of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, and about her death, right, how she left this world and what she said, right, before she left this world. Because of course we know she's a believer. You can't be living with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, giving birth to such a man or such a baby, right, and seeing him 24/7 and not be a believer. Right, of course, subhanallah. Right, she was a believer, and we will go into the story of her. Right, so when he was pregnant, when his mother was pregnant with him, his father passed away. Right, when he was visiting his maternal uncles, right, who are Bani Adi bin Najjar bil Medina. In Medina. And we know that Rasulullah has maternal uncles in Medina because Sayyidina Hashim, right, married Sayidina Salma. Right, so Sayyidina Hashim was Abdul Mutholib's father. Right, he on his way to Palestine, he married a woman in Medina who was called Salma. Right, she gave birth to Abdul Mutholib. Right, and Abdul Mutholib was brought back to Mecca. Right, so he has his mother's side, right, in Medina, right, because his mother was from Medina. Right, so so the lineage they know of a mother's side, right, that is in Medina. So, and that is the secret, of it all. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala connects everything, because he would later on go to Medina, right? And as a child, when he went to Medina, right, in fact, even then, right, it was said by the Jews who saw him as a child, who said this is the last prophet of our time. He's the last prophet. So even his own uncles heard it, right, when he was a child. Right? They heard what the Jews said. And all of this is to lay the platform, right, for him to be accepted in Medina, and for him to migrate there, right, and find sanctuary in Medina, right, away from Mecca when they begin to persecute him. Right? So subhanAllah, he actually has family there. Right? And that's why later on after the Battle of Hunayn, right, when he said, Lawla hijra, ana minal ansar. Right? He said that if it weren't for the hijrah, I will be of the Ansar. Right? And that some scholars say that refers to the hijrah of his grandfather, right, who migrated as a child, right, from Medina to Mecca. Right? If that had not happened, he would be of the people of Medina. Right? Because, his grandfather was born there. His Sayyidina Hashim passed away. So he was in the custody of Sayyidina Salma, who was from Medina, was a woman of Medina, right? But his uncle, Mutholib, brought Abdul Mutholib into Mecca, right? The story we went through in detail, right? So the father actually went to see his maternal uncles, right? Granduncles also, more so, right? His maternal granduncles, right? And he passes away there, right? It is also said, in some of the books that Medina has a disease in Medina. Right, so people who enter into Medina, they tend to fall sick in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After the hijrah, after the migration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he actually made dua, right, for the disease to be removed. Right, because when they went there, the Muhajirun from Mecca, right, when they went to Medina, all of them got affected by this disease, to the point that a lot of them thought they were going to die. Right, even Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Bilal, right, they were all they were making poems about, how terrible the disease is, and they're all suffering and they're deteriorating. Right, so Medina has a disease that the people of Medina are immune to. And the people who are living there, they are immune to the disease because they live there. Right, so they're used to the disease. But anyone who comes in tends to fall sick. Right, so, and of course, there are people who say that it was malaria, it was, they are because Medina has swarms. Right, so Rasul, when he went there, he made dua, the disease be thrown out of Medina, and he also drained the swarms. Right, so, when we go into Sirah, you actually see very human things. It's not just all magic and all, all mashallah. It is all mashallah. It's all, things that is out of this world, right? But there is a lot to do with society, a lot to be said about economy, a lot to be said about people, how they behave, right, with Rasulullah, and about leadership and governance. Right? A lot to do with that, because the first thing he did when he entered the town, right, of Medina was to clear the swarms. Right, because if that's where the disease is coming from, right, malaria, right, the mosquitoes are all there, right, they need to clear it out, right, for it to stop spreading. Right, so subhanAllah, he did a lot of things when he entered into Medina, which was not that he just entered and just conquered, right, but he helped the people, right, socially, economically, and even environmentally, right, in this situation, right, of the swarms, right. So so now, right, then he said, ثُمَّ تُوفِيَتْ أُمُّهُ وَهُوَ إِبْنُ سِتِّ سِنِينَ. Right, and then his mother passes away, and he is a child of 6 years old. So when he was 6, his mother passes away. Today we'll go into her story, right, about her passing away. Right, bil-Abwa bain al-Makkah wal-Medina. Right, she passes away at this place called Abwa. Till today it is known. Right, where is this place? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he himself pointed out to the Sahaba where was his mother's grave, and he pointed out to them where was his father's grave. Right, so he knew, because when he went later on, when his mother brings him to Medina, his mother actually goes to visit her husband's grave. Right, so he actually knows. Right, so even though he was a young boy of 6 years old, right, as mentioned, from the time he was a baby, he was mumayyiz. Right, he can understand, he can remember, he remembers in fact every single thing that happened to him since he was a baby. Right, so of course he knows where his mother's grave is. Right, so because he was there when she passed away. Right, so he actually brought the Sahabas later on, right, to see the grave of his mother, and they would say that they saw him cry in a way whereby they have never seen him cry. Right, when he was standing in front of his mother's grave. Right, this shows that the humanness and the emotions, right, of an orphan, right, who saw the death of his mother at 6 years old. These are all very painful things. Right? We don't. Sometimes when you read Sirah, you just go past it. You just read it. His mother passed away when he was 6 years old. it's so much more to that. It's not just she passed away when he was 6 years old, then he goes on to his grandfather, and in 2 years, his grandfather passes away when he was 8 years old. This is scarring. This is difficult on a child, right? To be born without a father. Mother passes away. Grandfather passes away, and he was the most beloved to them. So he used to be very close to his grandfather. So he won't say like, no, his grandfather, oh, grandfather lah, okay lah, distant a bit. No, he was very close. That was like a father to him. Right, and then later on he saw his uncle's death after many years later lah. Right, and then after he saw all of his children who passed away. Right, in front of him he buried 6 out of his 7 children. These are not light things. These are very, very heavy things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has caused to happen to our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We can't even imagine ourselves with a child that we know passed away. Right, we can't. Like for us it's like it's too difficult to actually, come to terms, when that actually happens to someone that you know, who's a young boy or young girl, toddler, right, who passes away. It's very difficult. He went through how many? Right, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so it's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Rasulullah says in the hadith that the more Allah loves a person, the more Allah tests that person. And the most tested of creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the prophets. They are the most tested of tested. Right, so he, and to bury his own beloved wife, right, that one also, like, you can't even imagine burying your own beloved spouse, right, of that time it was 15 plus, it was 13 plus 25, 15 years, right, that would be 28 years of marriage, right, because he married her when he was 25, and she passed away about 10 years after the revelation. So when he was, correct. So about 25 years, married to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she passes away, the most beloved, right? And in fact, he will never forget her. Right? It will go into her story also, because there are books written about them. Right? That is, in the Arabic language. I really want to, when we reach there, like go into her, right, and speak about Sayyidah Khadija radiyallahu ta'ala anha. So that one is later on, inshallah. Alright, so inshallah. Right, so and so his mother passed away at Abwa, and Abwa is a place between Mecca and Medina. It is nearer towards Medina. Right, she actually leaves Medina, right, and she falls sick, right, along the way. Again, it's all sickness, right? They all fall sick and they die. Right, and Medina seems to be a place of sickness. Right, they all get sick there, right, and then they die. وكانت قد قدمت به على أخواله بني عدي بن نجار تزيره إياهم, right? And she actually brought him to Medina, right, to visit his maternal uncles as well as the grave of his father. And it is said that the grave of his father is within Masjid Nabawi that we see today. The grave of the father of Rasulullah is within the precincts, right, of the masjid that we see today, right? But of course the people there are not going to label it, right, where exactly is the grave, but it's somewhere in there, right? Because of Rasulullah did say that my father's grave is within the area. Yeah, it could be possible that there are many graves that we walked over. They build over things, these people. Yeah, Allahu alam. Right, we don't know, Alright, and then so it said that fatuwfiyat wahiya raji'atun ila Makkah. Right, she died when she was on the way back to Makkah. She fell sick and she died. Fakafalahu jadduhu Abdul Mutholib. Right, so and his grandfather looked after him. وَكَانَ مُحِبًّا لَهُ, and he was so beloved to Abdul Mutholib. يجلسه معه على فراشه. He used to have, Abdul Mutholib used to have Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sit with him on his special mat. Like he had a mattress that was next to the Kaaba, in the shade of the Kaaba. Nobody, not even his own sons, are allowed to sit there with him. Right, but when Rasulullah was around, he was given the special privilege of sitting with his grandfather. The people tried to stop him as a small boy, to make him, get off, because Abdul Mutholib is the leader of Mecca. Right, but Abdul Mutholib would say, no, leave my grandson. And sometimes he was, leave my son. He would call him my son. Leave my son. Right, because he has a great destiny. He has a great affair to him. And they knew, that he has something great, that was destined for him. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Muhammad. Right, وَيَمْسَحُ بِيَدِهِ ظَهْرُهُ. And Abdul Mutholib used to rub the back of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, touching the Khatamun Nabi. Right? He would touch the khatam. Right, on the back of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He knows, they all know, right? They know all about all of these things. Right. وَيَسُرُّهُ مَا يَرَاهُ يَصْنَعُ وَيَقُولُ. Right, and he would, he used to be so pleased, right, to see whatever Rasulullah would do. Anything he did would please Abdul Mutholib. Right, he was like the favorite grandson of Abdul Mutholib, most beloved lah. Right, so it would just bring so much joy, right, to him to just to see Rasulullah. He'll be overjoyed, right, and to see whatever he does, whatever he says. So he was the companion of his grandfather. That's why we see when we talk about the deaths, it's not something light to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He himself relates in the hadith that he remembers the death of Abdul Muttalib, and he remembers Abdul Muttalib. He remembers how his grandfather was, and he was 8 years old, right, when his grandfather passed away. So he remembered everything crystal clear in his mind. Right, subhanallah. So what's the saying, Muhammad? Wahuwa ibnu, and then he would say, Abdul Muttalib would say, Wallahi, inna lahu la sha'anan. Right, so he would always say to the people, like, leave him, let him be with me. Right, don't chase him away. Right, whenever they have like meetings with him, they try to like to get the boy to go away. Right, because he's a small boy, he's still there. Right, but he's like, no, don't chase him away. Leave him here with me. We'll go into stories of Abdul Muttalib bin Rasulullah. Right, and he will say that for I swear by Allah, right, for surely he has a great destiny. He has a great destiny. There's so much to this boy. ثم توفي عبد المطلب وهو ابن 8 سنين. And Abdul Muttalib dies and he is 8 years old. وقد أوصى به عمه أبا طالب شقيق أبيه عبد الله. Right, and Abdul Muttalib, he entrusted Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Abu Talib. And why Abu Talib and not any other uncle? Is because Abu Talib is a shaqiq of Abdullah. Shaqiq means that they share the same mother. So Abdul Muttalib has many wives. So he has many sons, right, but from different women. Right? So he had 2 sons from the same woman, who was in Abdullah and Abu Talib. Right? So because they are full brothers, they're not half brothers, they're full brothers, so he entrusted the son of Abdullah to Abu Talib. Even though Abu Talib was very poor and he had many children, right, to look after, and he was very poor. Right? So, but even then, Rasulullah was entrusted to Abu Talib and not to his other uncles who were more wealthy, like Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab was much more wealthy, and he had like more than 10 uncles, right? But they were not entrusted with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right. وكان عليه هدبا شفوقا يؤثره على جميع أولاده. يؤثره على جميع أولاده. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was someone, Abu Talib was so gentle, right, and so loving to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he looked after his orphaned nephew, right, and he would always prefer Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam even over his own children, right. So even over his own children, he always prefer Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we'll go into the story about him. Okay, so now we're going back to where we left off, right. So that is from the book. I just read the book. Of course, I'm sure that you know by now I'm giving you more than the book. Right, inshallah. Okay. So now, alright. So now we left off where Sayyidina Halima, radiallahu ta'ala anha, she saw the incident of the splitting of the chest of Rasulullah happen, right? So now she's panicking, right, with him under her care, and she has had all these experiences of Jews trying to kill him, right? So of the people of the book coming to try and kill this boy. So now she's like, now it happened that someone actually took him and split his chest, right? But of course it was an angel, and nothing happened to him, right? But she still panicked, right? Because it could happen so easily that she could lose this boy under her care. And she did not want to be the one, that it happened to her, that she lost the boy under her care. So she immediately returned him to Sayiduna Aminah. Right? And we mentioned last week that when she returned him to Sayiduna Aminah, right, Sayiduna Aminah grilled her, asked her that why are you returning him so early? Like, you were so, forceful and so adamant on keeping him to yourself. Like, why, out of nowhere that you are returning him to me. And eventually, after grilling her, much and really asking, eventually she gave in, and she told her what happened. And Sayyidina Aminah said, are you afraid for him, for the shaitan, when the shaitan has come to him, or are you afraid that the shaitan will get to him? And Sayyidah Halima, she said, yes, I'm afraid that something bad will have happened to him, from the shayateen, because what she saw, was something that was not in this world. So she thought it would be the shayateen that came and did something to him that she didn't know what they did. And Sayyidah Aminah said, no, wallahi, by Allah I swear, the shaitan has no way, to this boy. And she says that, shall I tell you, about what I witnessed, and what I saw, in my pregnancy of him, and my giving birth of him. And she told Sayyidah Halima all that she saw and all that she witnessed. And these are people, they don't make up stories, right? They are known to be truthful people, right? So Sayyidah Halima, of course, knew what she was saying was definitely true, right? There was so much in what she was saying, right? So anyway, now he's in the care of his mother, and he is 4 years old, right? So when he was in the care of his mother, right, the mother knew, they know that he is being looked for, right, amongst the people of the book. It was clear, because people of the book would come, right, and they would look at him, right, and then they would say he is the last prophet, right, and some of them would say, we have to kill him. So the mother knows that he is in danger, right, of the people of the book. So she will always keep him close to her, right, and so they were very, very close, right, mother and son, right. And anyone who knows, if you are a single parent, and you have only one child, then you tend to grow very close to that child, right? Because he is all that you have, and you are all that he has, and there's no one else, right? So we know that she's very close to him, and he's very close to her. Together with them in the household, right, is this slave girl called Barakah. And I will mention about Barakah because Barakah has an amazing story, right? So Barakah, she's also called Ayman. You will hear these two names, right, in the books of Sirah. Ayman or Barakah is the same person, right? Barakah, she was actually the slave girl of Abdul Mutholib, right? So being Abdul Mutholib's slave girl, right, and she was a very young girl when she came to the household of Abdul Mutholib, right? Maybe in the early teens or even younger than that. She was young, right? But she was working and she was from Habasha, from Abyssinia, so she was like a black slave lah, right, who worked in the household of Abdul Mutholib. When Abdullah got married to Sayyidah Aminah, she was gifted as a gift, right, from Abdul Mutholib to Abdullah. So she is the property of Abdullah. When Abdullah passed away, right, she stayed on in the household of Aminah, right? But she is the property of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? That's why he is close to her also, right? Because she is a slave, right, of his. She became his property, right? Because his father left behind, right, her, right, for him. So she, right, she saw the pregnancy of Sayyidah Aminah with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She knew of the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she looked after this baby when he was first born, Sayyidina Barakah. Right, so now he has gone to live with Sayyidah Halima. When he came back, right, she was the one who also looked after him, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So she was also very, very close to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was a third person in the household. So it was her, Sayyidah Aminah, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the household. Right, she loved him deeply. Right, Barakah. Right, at this point she's a young woman, right, but she loved him like her own son, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he would say, right, he would say, throughout his life, right, even later on, he would say that Ayman, ummi ba'da ummi, right, Ayman, she is my mother after my mother, right, and he loved her very, very deeply. He will pass away before her, right, she passed away after him as an old woman, right, but she would, it was mentioned in the hadith that Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar would go and visit her after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah used to visit her often. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr, when he took over the Khalifa of Rasulullah took over the leadership from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, he would make it a point to do whatever Rasulullah used to do. He would make it a point, right? So he knew that he would visit Ayman, right? So he went to visit Ayman with Sayyidina Umar once, and when they were seated together, right, Ayman began to cry. And she was crying and crying and crying. And then Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar said, Ya Ayman. And because of her crying, they also began to cry. Because they were missing Rasulullah very, very much. And then Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, Oh, Ya Ayman, don't you know that, what is with Allah is better for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam than this dunya? right? Because he has passed away. So where he's at is better for him. That's where he needs to be, right? That is better for him with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then she stopped crying and she said that, of course I know that what is with Allah is better for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but I am crying, right? Because right now the wahyu has stopped, the Quran has stopped coming, right? So, and I miss that, right? I miss that with him going we get no more Quran, right, for us to listen to, right? And she was crying because of this, this loss, right? That with him going, the Quran has finished, right? It has stopped, right? And inshallah, when you look at Sirah and you go through Sirah with the Quranic verses, inshallah we will do that as we go into the revelation. It makes it, it's so powerful, right? To have the verses come in, right? With the Sahabas, it's so powerful. The Sirah with Quran, right? So Barakah, right? She was in the house of Sayyidatina Aminah, right? And she looked up to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a child, right? We're going to go right into we're going to go into the story of the death of Sayyidatina Aminah, right? So their life was basically simple, right? So now Rasulullah is past the age of 5, not yet the age of 6. So he was between 5 and 6, right? It's also about 1 year plus with his mother, very short time, right? So Sayyidatina Aminah decides to go to Medina, right? To see the maternal uncles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also to visit the grave of Abdullah, right? And this story, right, they know about this story because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he went to Medina later on in his life, when he migrated to Medina, right, he would point out to the Sahaba, this is where my mother brought me, right? This place right here, that's where she brought me. So all the memories come back when he went to Medina, right? And they will see him weep, right, from the memory of this journey that he took with his mother. And she would say, that's where I learned how to swim. He learned to swim in Medina because they had oasis, right? So she learned to swim with his cousins in Medina, right? And he said that was where my father's grave was, right? And this is where we slept, right? So he used to point in places in Medina where he spent time with his mother, right? So, and on his way out, right, of Medina, as in Aisha, she relates, right, on their way for Hajj, when they left Medina to go for Hajj in Mecca, right, Hajjul Wada', right, they went past the grave of Sayyidatina Aminah, and Sayyidatina Aisha was with him, right, and she said that he brought her, right, to see to the grave of Sayyidatina Aminah, right, and then he began to cry and cry and cry and cry and cry, right. Then she also began to cry, right, because of how much he was crying, right, in front of his mother's grave, and she said, and it's all about going to the story lah, right, of what happened, right, when he was in the grave by the grave of his mother. Right, so, Sayyidina Muhammad. Alright, so when his mother went to Medina with him, right, to be with his uncles, right, the Jews who were in Medina, right, they kind of caught wind, right, of him being in Medina, right, so they came to try and see him, right, to see what, to see if he is indeed the Prophet, right? So, and Sayyidatina Ayman, she is the one who relates all these stories, because sometimes you wonder, all these stories from before prophethood, who are the people who actually relate them, right? Because the mothers passed away, the fathers passed away, so who are those who are witnessing all of these things, right, to be able to witness them? So Sayyidatina Halima, right, she is the one who relates, but she also passed away before Islam became widespread, right? So there were Sahabas that she spoke to, and they are the ones who relate the hadith. And so for Sirah, there's a lot of narrations, right? Because of the narrators who narrate all these things lah. So Sayyidina Ayman Barakah, right? She's the one who narrates because she was there. So Sayyidina Aminah went to Mecca with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and also Barakah. They had one ride, right, one camel. Right, and they went to Mecca for a visit. Right, and Sayyidina Barakah, she relates that the Jews of Medina, right, they kept coming, right, to find Rasulullah and to touch his seal of prophethood. And they kept saying, Hada hu, right, this is him, it's him, is the last prophet, right, last prophet to be sent to mankind. And so all of them, they kept coming around him and they kept whispering and they kept saying. So Sayyidina Aminah and Barakah, right, they knew what was going on, right, they had experience, they know what's going on right now, right, that this is the sign that he is. The Jews know, right, who he is, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So it came to a point, right, whereby Sayyidina Aminah, right, began to whereby there was a Jew that came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, and he says that, who are you? The Jew says to Rasulullah, and he was a 5-year-old boy. They say, who are you? And then he turned to them and he said, Ahmad. Right, and Ahmad is his name in the Torah, right, not Muhammad, right, Ahmad. So I mean, Allah inspired him to say that, right, my name is Ahmad. And then the Jew went to his back, right, and looked between his shoulders, right, and they say that, right, هذا who? هذا Nabi. هذا نبي هذه الأمة. It is the Nabi of this nation. This is the last Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, and then and they were also whispering that they have to kill him. Right, these are like people who they find the Prophet and they want to kill the Prophet. Right, so Sayyidina Aminah, she actually grew scared. She grew afraid being in Medina because so many Jews were there. Right, so she actually grew afraid being in Medina for too long. So she decided to leave Medina. Right, and in fact, the Jew that did this, right, he actually went to his uncles, the Bani Najjar, right, in Medina, and the Jews told them that this boy, your nephew here, right, he is the last prophet. He's the last prophet of this ummah. He's the last prophet of this ummah. Right. So Sayyidina Aminah took Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, and decided to go home. Right, go back to Medina. It's too dangerous to be in. Go back to Mecca. It was too dangerous to be in Medina. On the way back, right, when they passed a place called Abwa, and Abwa is basically, it is desert. There's nothing there. Okay, it's just desert. Right, when they passed this place, Sayyidina Aminah fell sick. Right, very very ill. Right, so they had to stop, right, to rest. Right, because she was falling really ill. Right, and this illness, right, it would be the illness that will take her life. Right, and Sama'a, right, she was someone who was maybe in the area who actually witnessed this event. Right, so because there are Bedouins that live in that area, so there were those who actually witnessed the sickness of Sayidina Aminah, her falling sick. Right, and she relates that she saw Sayidina Aminah ill. Right, she has fallen sick and she was ill, and she saw a young boy, right, standing by the head of Sayidina Aminah, and that was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So his mother was laid down. She was very 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 ill. Right, at this point she was in her 20s. Right, very young. So you need to put things in perspective. How young are these people? Right, married at 18. Right, so now gave birth at 18. So now the son is 6 years old. Right, so probably 24. Or she may be younger than 18, right, in fact. Right, so Abdullah married at 18. Right, so she was probably younger. In her early 20s lah. Right, very young. So, and she said, this is Sama'a, she said that, I saw a young boy, a very handsome young boy with bright, face. His face was shining. Right, and he was standing next to his mother, right, and he had tears streaming from his eyes, right, seeing that she was very ill. Right, and then she says that, and then she says that in Sayyidina Aminah at this point she begins to read some poetry. And this is how the people of long ago are. Right, when they are in extreme sadness or in extreme happiness, they actually break into poetry. Right, and these people still exist today. Right, like I know Habib Omar, right, his mother, right, Habib Omar's father was abducted by the communists. Right, all of a sudden, when this happened, his mother was actually means the wife lah. Right, but Habib Omar's mother was actually on Hajj. Right, so the news actually reached her when she was not interim. Right, so her husband has been abducted. Like her sons were there by themselves interim. She had gone for Hajj. Right, so and they said that when she heard the news that her husband went missing, right, that the communists took him, right, she actually, her grief, right, was so great, right, that she actually broke into poetry. Right, and she began to just say lines of poetry, right, to express the grief. Right, and these are people of long ago. They express happiness, they express joy. And we saw Abdul Mutholib, right, when Rasul was born, he broke into poetry. Right, people of long ago, they are very refined. Right, so they don't they don't just say like give a sound like wow, or like or they cry uncontrollably, but they actually express their emotions in beautiful language. And it's on the spot, don't like compose it beforehand. It's on the spot, it just comes out, right, of their heart. Right? So it's till today when you read it, right, you say, subhanallah, it's so pure. Right? It's like this pure grief, right, pure emotion. So she says in the poetry, and I'll translate, and sorry, the English will not be like the Arabic, right, but I'll just try my best to translate. Right. So she says, Barakallahu fika min ghulami. Right. So, oh my son. Now she's speaking to her son. Right? Because now her facing her death, she knows she's facing death. Right. But for her, she says focusing on this boy. Right. Because he has a great, great destiny. So she says, may Allah bless you. Right. Amongst all the children, may you be the most blessed, oh my son. Yabni alladhi الذي من حوامه الحمامي. Right, so he said, oh my son, right, the one who, he's the most important and he's the most protected, right, person. And then she says, نجا من بعون ملك المنعام. Right, and you are a success, right, from by the help, right, of the king, right, who who bestows his ni'mah, who bestows his blessings. So she shows she's a believer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The king who bestows his blessings is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then فَوَدْ الْغَدَى تَقْدِيرٍ بِالسِّهَامِ بِمِئَةٍ مِنْ إِبْلِ سَوَّامِ. Right, and so that you were, freed, right, in the past, right, by the drawing of lots, right, by the 100 camels, right, who came, and took your place, right? So this meaning there's just an explanation of what this is. So it's meaning the time of Abdullah we went through. We're saying that Abdullah was placed against camels. Like they were going to slaughter Abdullah, but instead they slaughtered the 100 camels. Right? That's a story from before. Right? So it actually said that it was because of you that your father was saved. Right? And we know that because after he was saved and the 100 camels were slaughtered, right, and he got married, he died within a few months. Right, so it was to pass on the genes of Rasulullah into the mother, Sayiduna Aminah. Right, and then she says, right, at this point, she says, in sahha, right, in sahha ma abasaratu fi manami, and she says that, and if it was true, right, if it is true, whatever I've seen in my dreams, right, so now she's really expressing herself, right, to this boy, right, and she says, فأنت مبعوث إلى الأنام. Right, for surely, right, you are the one who was raised, right, who was sent to all of human beings. Right, so she declares at this point. Right, so for surely you are the one who was sent to all of human beings. إلى الأنعام من عند الجلال والإكرام. Right, from the one who is manifest and who is generous, right, the noble Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, so you see, if what I saw in my dreams were true, then for surely you were sent to all of mankind. Right, from the one, right, who had the best, who is, the most glorious one, right, and the most generous one who has sent you to all of mankind. تُبْعَثُ فِي الْحَلِّ وَالْحَرَامِ. Right, and you are sent, right, to give what is to give what is halal and haram, right, what is permissible and what is forbidden to teach. تُبْعَثُ بِالتَّحْقِيقِ وَالْإِسْلَامِ. Right, you were sent, right, with truth, right, to affirm, and with Islam, right, submission. Dini abika al-barra Ibrahimi. Right, with the religion of your father, the most righteous, Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. Tub'ath bit-takhfifi wal-islami. Right, you were sent, right, to make things easy, right, and with Islam. Allah tuwaliha ma'al aqwami. Right, that you do not tuwaliha ma'al aqwami, so that it will not be given, right, to the other nations, right? To Allah tuwaliha ma'al aqwami. Fallahi anhaka 'anil asnami. And she swears by Allah, for surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prevented you, right, from ever bowing to the idols. Right? So we see in her verses that definitely she was a believer. Right, definitely. At very least she was a monotheist. Right, so if you ever hear people say anything other than that about the parents of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there are people who go around, right, who say, oh, the parents of Rasulullah are kafir, right, they are in the hellfire, they are burning there because they are not Muslim, right? That's not true. At all is not true, right? Because they did express, they know their son, right? They've seen him, right? So and they know that he is of truth. And then she says, Kullu hayyin mayyit. And she says that everyone who lives will die. And she says, Wa kullu jadidin bal. And everything that is new, it will wear away. Wa kullu qabilin yafna. And every group, right, it will dissipate. Wa ana, and she said, and I, maytatun, I will die. وَذِكْرِي, and my remembrance, baq, right, it will stay forever. Right, she said this at her death. Why? وَقَدْ تَرَكْتُ خَيْرًا وَوَلَدْتُ طُهْرًا. Right, because I left behind all of goodness, and I gave birth to the pure. Right, so and she was right. Right, till today her name is being mentioned, and till today the Muslims they name their children after her, Aminah. Right, it's a popular name amongst Muslims, Aminah. Right, so the Muslims remember her till today, and the Muslims name our daughters after her. Right, in our love and our respect and our honor of the mother of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so وَكُلُّ حَيٍّ مَيِّتٍ وَكُلُّ جَدِيدٍ بَالٍ وَكُلُّ قَبِيلٍ يَفْنَى وَأَنَا مَيْتَةٌ وذكري باق وقد تركت خيرا وولدت طهرا. Right, for surely I have left what is good and I give birth to what is pure. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So at this point she passes away, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he cries, right? He cries at this point very much with Ayman, who was with him. Baraka Ayman was there, right, with him. And she was the one who actually brought him home. Because remember, he was in the middle of a desert, Right, there was nobody there. Was him, his mother, and she was speaking to him as she passed away. So he was looking into her eyes, right, and he was watching her, and she was looking at. They were together, right? And she passed away in front of him there, right? So Subhanallah, right? And then Ayman took him and brought him home back to Mecca, right? And when he reached Mecca, right, she went to Abdul Mutholib, right, and told Abdul Mutholib all that she saw in Medina, right, and she informed Abdul Mutholib of the death of Sayidina Aminah. Right. So at this point, Sayyidina Abdul Mutholib, right, and before you go into Sayyidina Abdul Mutholib, Habib, he mentions at this point, he says that, how can these people who are, and this is something that is quite widespread among some groups of Muslims, right, that the parents of Rasulullah are not, they're not saved, right, they are basically in the hellfire, right, they are disbelievers, they are whatsoever, and one thing I heard from Habib Ali Jifri, who said, he said that these people talk about the parents of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, as if they are on golden thrones in in paradise, and you can say who's in the hellfire and who's in paradise. It's as if right, you don't know, right, who's in hellfire and who's in paradise, right? And they say that, do you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hurt his prophet to that extent, right, to throw his parents into the hellfire? Of course not, right? And he said that, if on the day of judgment, right, in lam ta'mun Aminah fala amin fil mahshar, right? If Aminah means the one who is entrusted, it also means, it comes from the word Aman, right, which means to be safe, right? So if Sayyidina Aminah is not safe on the day of judgment, then who will be safe, right, on the day of judgment? And if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, he cried at her grave, right? Do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not ennoble him, right, with the saving of his parents on the day of judgment. Because even if they didn't live to see his prophethood, they were in fact monotheists. Right, so they were believers in one God, in the religion of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. So if they don't believe in anything else, right, at least we know that they are monotheists. And we know definitely they are monotheists, right, because they carried him in them. Right, so how can, someone who carried Rasulullah in her ever bow to an idol? It's impossible. Even if you know the rank of your Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, can that be possible? Right, that someone of that rank, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the womb that bore that, right, the womb that bore that, would Allah allow that womb to even go near any idol? No, definitely not. Out of honor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just that is good enough proof for us that she was a monotheist. Right, she was not in any way a polytheist. Right, and they said that, and he said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to visit her grave. Because it was near Medina, right? So he used to go to her grave, right, and visit her grave, right? And if she was a mushrik, if she was a disbeliever and a mushrik, would he do that? Right? Actually go to her grave and visit it. Right? But he would. He went to her grave several times with the Sahabas, right? And when the Sahabas relate, they have never seen him cry, right? The way he cried, right, when he was at his mother's grave, because all the childhood emotions, of a 6-year-old seeing his mother pass away, and a 6-year-old who has exact memory of that event, who saw the event. Even us in our age right now, right, for us to actually witness our own parents, our own relatives, or people that we know pass away in front of us, right? Already, that's a memory that is etched in your mind, right? And it's an emotional scar, right, that will be there because you saw the death, right? You saw their soul leaving, right? And that's what he saw at 6 years old, right? And then and the ulama, they say that, right, they say that it is undisputed amongst the ulama. Right? I'm just going to mention a few of these things because of the people who are out there who say things that are nonsensical basically, right, about Sayyidah Aminah. Right, so if you do, if they do come and tell you, what, the parents of Rasulullah are in the hellfire, the parents are whatsoever kan, right, you just tell them a few things right, about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and about the seerah, right, that you have learned. And the ulama, right, there is no dispute, and there is no difference of opinion that the most noble place on the face of this earth, right, the most noble place on the face of this earth, right, there is even more noble, right, and more blessed, right, and more high than the Kaaba itself, right, is the very part of the earth that carries the body of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is no dispute about this matter, right, because he is the best of creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says so, right? He is the best of creation, even better than the Kaaba, higher than the Kaaba. So just that plot of land whereby his body rests, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that plot, right, is higher in ranking, right, in nobility than the Kaaba itself. Right? And we believe that because he is higher than the Kaaba. Right? Because if not for the Kaaba, if not for Rasulullah, the Kaaba won't be there in the first place. Right? The whole creation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the creation because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And honor for him. And the ulama also say that the ummah of Rasulullah till today has not been wiped out because Allah honors His Prophet. Right? Allah gives us time. Right? The other nations, right, they keep disobeying and Allah wipes them out. Right? Allah sends an earthquake, Allah sends a volcanic eruption, Allah sends, whatever, just to clear them, right, because of their disobedience, right, and how stubborn they are in their disobedience. And the ulama say, then how come, we have not reached any of these, calamities, right, that wipes out the entire ummah of in our time, right? And they say that because of Allah's mercy on the ummah, because of the prophet of this ummah, Allah's love for that prophet, right, because of him, Allah has withheld, right, He has not sent it yet, right, because to give them chance, right, go and fix your life, fix yourself, right, the day of judgment is coming, right, and to allow Rasulullah sallallahu to have, pleasure, right, with his ummah coming into paradise, right. And then they say that the most ashraf, right, the most noble of plots of land, right, in this entire world, in this entire creation, right, all of the cosmos, everything, right, the most noble, right, and it's even more noble than paradise itself, right, because remember, paradise is a creation. Paradise is a creation, right, and what is the best of creation? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So that plot of land that his body rests, that is even better than paradise itself. Right, that is even better than paradise itself. Right, and I used to think, when I went to Medina and when I first went there when I was young, and people said that, the Rawdah, the Rawdah part of the Masjid Nabawi is part of paradise. So I was like, oh, it's just a small part of paradise, like just the Rawdah. Right, and then you always, when you're young, you always think, oh, paradise has like all this like great stuff in paradise. Right, and now to think about it, the Rawdah, right, is in fact better than what is in paradise right now. Because the Rawdah is called the Rawdah because it was where some used to frequent. He used to walk past there very often. Right, so it's a place, right, that had him, right, the most, the Rawdah. Right, so that, right, we would say it is better than whatever that doesn't have him. Right, wherever he's at, that's where the best, the greatest blessings descend. Right, so his grave, and that's where his physical body is. That is the best place, right, in all of creation, including paradise. Right, the best place, right, even above the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his nobility, the place whereby the body of Rasulullah is resting. Because that is the best of creation. So they said that, if this is what the ulama have agreed upon, and there is no difference of opinion on this, then what more, right, they say والعلماء قال أن أشرف بقعة في الأرض موضع الذي حمل جسد النبي. Right, so that the most noble of places on this earth is the place whereby the body of Rasulullah is being held. فما بال الرحم الذي كون فيه جسده الشريف. So what do you think, if the best place on this earth, right, is the place whereby the body of Rasulullah is resting, then what do you think about the womb, right, in which his body developed? Right, do you think Allah will throw that womb into the hellfire? Right, and when there were Sahabas, right, who would once he did hijama, it's all recorded as Sahih Hadith, right, in the text, right, when he did hijama, meaning cupping, when Rasulullah did cupping, and blood came out, right, it was wet cupping, and the blood they will collect, right, and he gave the blood to one of the Sahaba and said, get rid of it, right, like this is put it out of sight, right, basically. So this Sahaba, now he has this cup of blood, doesn't know what to do, right? So he goes out, right? He can't throw it because it's the blood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what does he do? He drank it. He actually drank it, and the blood of Rasulullah is not icky like our blood, right? It's not smelly, it's not najis, right? Our blood is like that, right? His blood was pure, and it was beautifully smelling, right? It was. You don't think of it as something that was sticky and icky. It's not. Right? It was pure and smelling like misk. Right? So the Sahaba actually drank it. Right? Then he went back. Rasulullah asked him, so what do you do with the blood? And then he said, I got rid of it. And got rid of it. Then Rasulullah said, do you drink it? And then he said, yes, ya Rasulullah, I drank it. And then he said that your body will now be forbidden on the hell of fire because you've mixed your blood with my blood, right? And my blood cannot enter the hell of fire. And there are many stories from the Sahabas whereby they would consume something of his, right, and then they became forbidden for the hell of fire to touch. So what do you think about the womb, right, that carried him for 9 months, right? That in this womb, his flesh developed, and his bones developed, and he became a baby in this womb. Right? Do you think Allah would throw that womb into the hellfire? Of course not. Right? Never. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not do that. Right? And Allah Sayyidina Muhammad. Right? So and then the ulama say that that Rasulullah is going to intercede for all of the ummah, and he's going to give up on his mother and his father. Do you think that on a day of judgment, when he comes and he keeps asking Allah to place his ummah into paradise, you think he's going to leave his parents in the hellfire? Of course not. So the people who say this, like, they don't think, or they don't, what are they saying? Right? And this is the things that will hurt Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, by them say. Right, and there's a hadith, right, whereby Sayyidatina Aisha, right, she relates this hadith. Right, so she says that, right, so she said, Sayyidina Aisha, she relates that on our way to Hajj al-Wada', right, she says, Hajja bina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam Hajj al-Wada', right, we went for Hajj, the farewell pilgrimage, right, and she says that فَمَرَّ عَلَى قَبْرِ أُمِّهِ, right, and we passed by the grave of his mother. وَهُوَ بَاكٍ حَزِينٌ مُغْتَمٌ, right, and then when we passed by the grave of his mother, and Aisha, she relates, right, he was crying, right, and he looked so sorrowful, right, in his face, right, when he walked past his mother's grave. فَبَكَيْتُ لِبُكَائِهِ sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So I cried because he was crying. Sayyidina Aisha said, how much he was crying, I also began to cry. Right. And then she said, ثُمَّ إِنَّهُ نَزَلَ فَقَالَ, right, and then he got off the camel, right, and he said, يَا حُمَيْرَةَ istamsiki. Right, so he got off the camel and he said, oh Humaira. Humaira is his nickname for Sayyidina Aisha, right, because she was small and she was reddish in her face. She was fair and she had red cheeks. Right, so Humaira meaning, the small red one. Right, she's reddish in her skin complexion lah. Right, so he said, oh, red one. Right, Ya Humaira. Right, stay where you are and hold on to the camel. Right, so hold on to our ride. So he got off and he went. فَاسْتَنَدْتُ إِلَى جَنْبِ الْبَعِيرِ, right, فمكث عني طويلا مليا ثم إنه عاد إلي. So she says, I sat there, right, with the camel, right, and I leaned against it, and I was sitting there for so long, right, I was waiting for him to come back. Right, he actually went to the grave, right. So she was waiting for him to come back, right, and then eventually he returned. وهو فرح متبسم, and he was so happy. I saw his face shining brightly, right, with light, and he was smiling. فَقُلْتُ لَهُ, so I said to him, بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, right, may my mother and father be sacrificed for you, is the way they speak, right, بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ نَزَلْتَ مِنْ عِنْدِي وَأَنْتَ بَاكٍ حَزِينٌ مُغْتَمٌ. Right, Ya Rasulullah, you left me, right, and you were so sad and you were crying and you were, in so much grief. فَبَكَيْتُ لِبُكَائِكَ, and I also cried because you were crying, right, because of the amount of grief I saw in you. ثُمَّ عُدْتَ, and now you came back. إِلَيَّ وَأَنْتَ فَرِحٌ مُبْتَسِمٌ, right, and you came back and you were so happy and you were smiling. فَمِمَّا ذَا يَا Rasulullah, and why is that so, Ya Rasulullah? What happened, when you went away? فقال, right, and he said, ذهبت لقبر آمنة أمي. I went to the grave of my mother Aminah. فسألت أن يحييها, right, and I asked Allah to bring her back to life. Right, this is the hadith there. I asked Allah to bring her back to life. فأحياها فآمنت بي, and Allah brought her back to life and she believed in me, and then Allah returned her to her grave. Right. So it's not difficult for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do this. And in fact, the ulama say that all of the mu'jiza of all the prophets, right, was seen in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like whatever they were able to do, right, for them, right, of the mu'jiza, of the miracles, he did it too. He did all the miracles that they would do. So Nabi Isa alayhi salam, he used to bring the dead back to life, right, by Allah's will. So why not Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Right, why not? Right, the ulama take this as one of the instances whereby he did what Nabi Isa did. Right, Nabi Isa raised the dead back to life, and he did the same thing. And why not? Nabi Isa raised random people back to life, and not like pious people. So why not the parents of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And it was said that both his father and his mother he raised back to life, right? And they believed in him, and they went back to their graves. And it's not difficult for Allah subhanahu wa taala. It's not something that we cannot imagine to have happened, right? I would think Allah subhanahu wa taala will allow it to happen, right? Because if they lived to see his time, they would definitely have believed in him. right? But Sayyidina Abdullah especially, he was not allowed to even live to see him, right? Because by the by the properties of the Prophet ﷺ, he was to be born without a father, right? So it was impossible, right, for him to have his father around when he was born, right? So almost Muhammad, right? So now he is back, right, with his grandfather, right? He is back with his grandfather, and his grandfather loved him so much, right? And of course they have this extra care for him because he is an orphan. And any of you here who knows orphans, right? You tend to have a very soft spot for them. And like my nephew, he's orphaned, and his father passed away. Right, so like he's very dear to me, and I have a very soft spot for him, right? Because he doesn't have a father, right? So there's something there's an aching that he carries around, right? There's a pain, right, in his heart that he carries around, and then often there's something about them, right? The Rasulullah, he said that me and the one who looks after the orphan, we are like this in paradise, and he placed two fingers together, right? The one who looks after the orphan. And when I see my nephew, like it is very clear, right, there is a pain that he carries, right, that he at this point when he's 4 years old, 5 years old lah, he's 5 years old, but he's not able to express it, right? He knows that there's a pain in his heart, right? But so he expresses it in angst, right? In anger, in just frustration, right? Because he's a small boy, right? But you those who look after orphans, right, there is a psychology to them. And there's an emotional, special thing about them, right? They are orphan, right? So Rasulullah, he understood the orphan, and he loved the orphan. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So Sayyidina Mutholib, right, when he took over, he took care of his grandson now, right? He would always ennoble Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and elevate him, right? So he would never eat unless Rasulullah was there with him to eat with him. And that was how much he loved his grandson. And we mentioned on his firash, on his mattress next to the Kaaba, that's in the shade of the Kaaba, and nobody was allowed to sit there except Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the only one. Right? And it was related that once there was a Christian that came to Abdul Mutholib. Right? And at this point, Rasulullah was not with him next to the Kaaba. So Abdul Mutholib was seated next to the Kaaba, and a Christian, right, actually came up to Abdul Mutholib and he said, "Oh Abdul Mutholib, right, we have news for you. And he said that we've seen your people, right, and we know our books, and we know, right, that definitely there will come a prophet from the lines of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, Nabi Ismail alayhi salam, right, and he will manifest amongst your people." And this Christian says, and Abdul Mutholib, I see that he's going to be from you. He's going to come from your loins, right? From your family. I see all the signs that he's going to be coming from you, right? And just then, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam walks up. Right? He actually comes into the gathering, and the Christian turned to him, right? And his eyes became wide, like when he saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And he looked at his face. Right, and he was just observing the boy, and he went to the back, and he saw the seal of prophethood, right? And he said, "This is him. Hada hu. This is the last prophet. He's here. He's already manifested. He's here." Right? And then the Christian says, "Who is he to you, Ya Abdul Mutholib? How is he related to you?" And Abdul Mutholib said, "He is my son." Right? And the Christian said, No. He cannot have a father. Right? Our books do not mention that he has a father. His father is not supposed to be around. And then Abu Mutholib said, rather, he is the son of my son. Right? He is my grandson. And the Christian says, yes, that's correct. Right? That's correct. Right? He should not be having a father. Right? The signs are all very clear, right, on his prophethood. And there are books written on the signs of the prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the proofs of his prophethood sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And what's his name, Muhammad, right? So now, right, so Abdul Mutholib has his boy with him, right? And for these next 2 years of his life, he would basically shadow Abdul Mutholib wherever Abdul Mutholib went, right? They were always together, and the people, right, they knew about this blessed boy, Right? So whenever there was a drought and rain would not fall, right, they would take Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Abdul Muttalib would take him, carry him on his shoulders, right, go to the Kaaba and make dua. Right? And they will make dua, and the people there will relate, there will be not a cloud in the sky. No cloud, nothing. But when they brought the blessed boy, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they brought the blessed boy to the Kaaba, right, and they saw him raise his hands, right, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, clouds begin to form. Right? And the rain begins to fall. Right? Immediately. It's immediate. Right? The dua is made and the rain falls. Right? So everyone knows him as the blessed boy. And whenever they lost anything and they couldn't find it, like they lost their camel, lost their whatever, right, or something of value to them, they would get the blessed boy, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, to go and look for it. Right? So he would actually go out to the desert, right, and he would come back with whatever was lost. Right? By his dua, and Allah brings things to him. Right? And this happens so often to the point whereby Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib, he got worried. Because some would be doing like a job. Like he would go out and find people's lost things. So Abu Muttalib put a stop to it. Right? Because he feared over the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the Jews would get to him and kill him. But they were still afraid that someone would come and harm Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said to Barakah, and Barakah was in the picture, and Barakah would stay with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam until he got married. And even after he got married, she would live with him in the house, right, serving in the house. But soon after he got married, right, he would free her, right, as a slave, right, and he would get her to be married off, right, and that actually that caused her so much grief that she was freed and married off, right. Now other slaves would be so happy to be freed and married off, right, but she was so grieved, right, because she didn't want to go, she wanted to stay there, right, in the house, right. But Rasulullah being Rasulullah, right, he frees his slaves, right, he did not keep his slaves, right, he frees them. Right, so what's his name, Muhammad? Right, and Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib, right, Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib, the narrations, so we'll go into a few narrations, right, before we go into the death of Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib. It's 90, yeah. I just noticed my watch. It's 9:30. Okay, I mentioned one story. Okay, one story, and then the next time around we'll go into his death. Right. So there was a person who lived in the time of Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib, and he was the same age of Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib. Right. He said he was near the Kaaba, right, when he fell asleep, and he had a dream. So in his dream, he heard a voice calling from the skies, right, and this voice said, "Look out for a man." Right, who has a white face, right, shining face, black hair. He's very tall, right, and the voice began to describe Abdul Muttalib, Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib, right? And this voice said that this man, right, he will be on this particular mountain, and with him, right, is the pure of the pure, right. So when this person woke up, right, he looked around, and he thought in his mind, the description is describing Abdul Muttalib. So he went around to look for Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib, and true enough, he found him on a mountain, right? And with him is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the pure of the pure, right? And he saw them making dua, right? And Allah sent down rain. So of the many narrations that the people of that time, they actually witnessed with their own eyes, which really it brings you to really wonder, right? Why were they such enemies of him sallallahu alaihi wasallam? They knew of his miracles, they knew of his blessing, they knew everything. That's why Allah is very harsh on them in the Quran, because they saw everything. Yet they disbelieved and they fought him. They drove him out. They persecuted, they tortured. Right, the worst of the worst. Right, what they did, right, when he manifested with the message, right, so yeah, so then I have like a few same stories, similar stories, right, of other people of the book who would see him, right, and they would see him, make dua, and they would say that's last prophet, right, and and Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib, he knows that this boy is to be protected, right. So inshallah, I'll just end with his death So Abdul Muttalib dies, and Rasulullah was 8 years old, and Rasulullah himself relates, right, that I saw Abdul Muttalib as a child. right? And when I was 8, he passed away. So it's from his own narration that he says that his grandfather passed away when he was 8 years old. And Sayyidina Abdul Mutholib, he entrusts Rasulullah SAW to Abu Talib, right, who will look after him. And inshallah next week we'll go into the miracles that Abu Talib witnessed, right, with Rasulullah SAW under his care, right, inshallah. And then from there we will go into a few more stories. We're still in his childhood, we're still in the childhood of Rasulullah, the childhood, right, of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Are there any questions?
With regards to the people who said that the parents of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are in hellfire, is because I watched a video on YouTube. Some ustaz from, I think, Wahhabi ustaz, and then Habib Rizieq answered them that based on Imam Suyuti discussion, they have written a book on what are the evidence that Rasulullah's parents are not in hellfire. The first evidence is that they were the people of before Rasulullah became the messenger, right? They were people of fitrah.
Yeah.
So between Nabi Isa and Rasulullah SAW, there were no messenger, and Allah said in Al-Quran that He will not, persecute the people whom He has not sent a messenger.
Yeah.
So how can Allah put the parents of Rasulullah in hellfire when Rasulullah was not yet a messenger? So they cannot be blamed. That's number one. Number two, they were monotheists. Right? So that's number two. And then there were the evidence on why Rasulullah cried when Rasulullah asked for forgiveness for his mother, and Allah said there is nothing to forgive. That was the answer. And then the Wahhabi said that shows Allah doesn't forgive the mother. But the interpretation of that hadith is that
there's nothing to forgive.
There's no dosa.
That's the answer.
People who wants to believe that the parents are in hellfire,
I don't even know why they want to believe that.
they believe that if she must have done some serious sin that she's in hellfire. Allah said Allah doesn't forgive her because there were actually
no sins.
Because she had no sins to be forgiven in the first place. But you see, it was interpreted in a negative way. And then the other hadith was somebody asked Rasulullah, where is your father? And then Rasulullah said, my father and your father are in hellfire. So what was the interpretation of this hadith? So Habib Rizieq said, when Rasulullah said my father, he doesn't mean his father Abdullah, he means his uncle, because in Arabian culture, Arab culture, uncles are also called father. Abdul Lahab is in hellfire. So that hadith, when Rasulullah said, where is your father, he's referring to Abu Lahab and not his father. So these were the arguments.
But I don't know what they gain Right, how do you gain by putting people in the hellfire? Like, as if you are the one who are putting them in the hellfire. Like, what is your business, Like, to keep... Why must they insist, on all of these things? And the Habib, he said that, if there was the hadith, right, whereby there was this prostitute, right, who, because she gave water to a thirsty dog, right, Allah forgive her of all her sins and Allah placed her in paradise. Then he said that, what more? Of a mother who serves her child, right? And the child is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the mother is Aminah. Don't you think that Allah will honor those hands, right, that serve this child, like the body that served the child, right? And or are you placing him worse than a dog, right, of the Bani Israel? It's something that's so. But they get involved with all of these things, and they like to insist that they are correct.
What I feel is the emotion of people who said that the parents of Rasulullah are in hellfire, and they quote these two hadith, and they say it as a matter of fact, They say I'm not saying it from my emotion. I'm just saying on facts. The way they say it, as if it's really facts. Actually, it's interpretation of the hadith. I feel there is an element of hasad there is an element of envy there.
But they're Muslims, no?
Yeah, because maybe they want some power, maybe they want some political power, maybe they want something which they don't get. So they're not happy with something. So they do this.
Yeah.
But how can they love Rasulullah?
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's why, how can it hurts him.
Yeah, I mean, it's so unthinkable.
Like, even like if someone tell you that your parents are in the hellfire, you get upset, kan? Like, don't say that. It's still far for them. Come on. Like, don't say that to my parents.
I mean, I'm sure Rasulullah prayed for his parents as a child. I mean, of course, his prayers are, of course,
accepted, definitely.
Yeah, accepted.
Subhanallah, Ya Allah. May Allah give us the truth of our love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and always speak about him with the greatest of manners and etiquette, on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and unite us with him in this world and the next world, right? And the highest parts of people who honored him and his parents, right? Definitely, like really speaking, when I was reading about Sayidina Aminah, and I was listening to Habib Omar, and I put it on my Instagram, my Facebook, of Habib Omar when he relates his story, and and he goes in deeply, he cries, he goes into tears, right? Because of the love that he has for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Sayyidina Aminah, right? So, and Sayyidina Aminah has become beloved to me, learning about her, and I hope she has become beloved to all of you, and then you learn more and more about her, Sayyidina Aminah, right? You see this young lady, right? It makes her so human. This young lady losing her husband, now pregnant, and then giving birth and seeing all these dreams that she saw, and all these miracles and the light that was coming out, and Sayyidah Maryam coming to her, and subhanallah, her experience. How was she? And then having your son return to you, and then having to say goodbye to him, only to be reunited in the next world, inshallah. Right, subhanallah, it's an entire, she's a woman that becomes very alive to us. In our eyes, we know who she is. Right, so we all guide everybody who is learning the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, we'll pause there. الفاتحة أن الله يرزقنا العلم النافع والعمل الخالص المقبول وحسن التعليم ودلالة على الهدى ويسر بذلك قلب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وإلى أرواح معلمينا مشايخنا وذي حقوق علينا وإلى حضر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.